Hello and welcome to All Things Cloth, the video series. This is episode 1. Today we're talking about menstrual products, specifically menstrual pads. It was our most requested topic when we asked upon you joining our group. So I thought I'd get straight into it and introduce you all to menstrual pads, also known as cloth pads. Another word that is sort of thrown around about them is mama cloth, and I guess one of the things that I never realised when I used to call them mama cloth is that obviously not only mums get their period. I think it's really important just to highlight that they are menstrual cloth or menstrual pads, reusable menstrual pads, not mama cloth. So that's just a little point that I was really glad when that was raised to me, and I hope that everybody sort of takes it on board when they're speaking about menstrual cloth in the future. So I've got a few things to cover off today, just sort of an introduction to cloth pads. I have quite a bit of information for you. Some of it will blow your mind. It blew mine, and just try and make it seem a bit easier for everyone. I found it so overwhelming, and I found there was not really any resources when I was trying to transfer over from disposable to reusable menstrual products. I personally am not able to use a cup, so I won't be speaking about cups in my vlog series. However, you may see a blog come from a guest blogger or from somebody else in our team in the coming months. So why would you use menstrual cloth or reusable cloth products for your period? So I've got a couple of stats for you. This stuff just blew my mind. I knew that it must have been a large environmental impact and a large cost impact, but I didn't really understand actually quite how impactful it is. So different resources gave me different information. One resource said we use approximately 12,000 menstrual products throughout our menstruating years. That would be pads and tampons. Another resource said 16,800. In Australia alone, we contribute through disposable menstrual products 20,000 tonnes of landfill every year. They don't break down. They're plastic. If they do break down, you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Not a single disposable pad would be broken down as of yet. They haven't been around that long. So that's massive. There's no research or scientific evidence to prove this, but I can speak from experience and from other friends' experience that using disposable products has more of an impact to our health than we realise. Myself personally, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I have a lot of cramping, a lot of pain, a lot of aching when I use disposable products. And even when my period returned postpartum, I barely had cramps at all. I had a little bit of cramps just as I was leading up to it, and I didn't have cramps throughout using cloth products. Then I ran out of pads because I didn't have enough, and I had to buy some disposable ones, and the cramps began. The ache up from there started with the disposable products, and it blew my mind that I thought that was normal to get that kind of pain through a period, and it, in my experience, is actually to do with the disposable pads. So it's known to reduce endometriosis symptoms. It's known to help reduce blood flow, though that hasn't happened in my case. There's quite a bit of unofficial evidence around the internet around the health benefits of using reusable products. I know that lots of doctors recommend cups as well, in terms of helping assist with your flow and volume, etc. So that to me is a no-brainer. Then I started working out the cost. Kotex regular pads with wings are approximately 30 cents each. So, you know, you'd get a couple of packets of them or whatever. You might get some liners, you might get some overnight ones, but let's just say they're on average 30 cents each per piece. And if you're using 16,800 over your menstruating years, that's $5,040 that you would be spending over your menstruating years on disposable pads. Even at the higher price range of approximately $25 each, if you have to replace them every 10 years, which would be about how long these would last, they're not high wear and tear, they're very well made. Every 10 years, if you had to buy 20, let's say, for your cycle, you're looking at about $2,000 over 40 years of menstruation. So that original number of $5,000, just over $5,000, that's based on 40 years as well. Realistically, you're probably actually going to spend about $10 per pad, which is only $800. So you're going from $5,000 to $800, give or take. So, you know, that's pretty phenomenal, really, when you think about it. You aren't buying nearly 17,000 disposable products. Now, I just want to point out that when I used disposable products, I did use an organic brand, pretty low chemical, didn't come with wrappers, so it was the lowest waste option that I could find. I still had issues with them, and yeah, still got ache, etc, etc. So just thought that was worth pointing out. I still had one random one lying around. So let's talk about cost. So you've got a couple of options. You've got some of your higher end either Australian brands that make overseas. There's quite a few out there, and you've also got quite a few handmade Australian brands known as Work at Home Mum or WAM pads as well. So I've got mostly Work at Home Mum pads here. I really like to support handmade. And I've also got some from an Australian brand who manufactures overseas. As I said, it's really more about your budget, the style that you like, how much you like to be able to customize things. You can get lots of different fabric, so that's something I'll talk about in a minute. And so it's really about personal preference and what you want out of your cloth pad. So how many do you need? Think about the disposable pads or tampons that you use over a cycle. You kind of just need that many. Now, in saying that, that's for someone who might have a standard period of 5 days, let's say. You might use 12 regular pads, 5 liners, 5 overnight, whatever, and you might need 20 in your set. I personally need a lot more than that. I bleed for 1 to 2 weeks, and with Melbourne weather, they don't dry that quickly, so I like to have a full stash to last me for my whole cycle. I've also had some issues with large sort of flow, and so I bought a whole range of stuff, including liners and regular pads, and then I found that they weren't cutting it, so I've had to buy a bunch more heavy pads to cater for my heavier days, which is over half of my period. Now, washing them, that's probably where most people get concerned, obviously, with most cloth products. So, difference between cloth pads and cloth nappies, for example, is that there's no feces or urine on here. So, blood is not as potent, I suppose, as them, and so you don't need to quickly rush and wash them each time you change them. How I look after my pads is I carry around a few small wet bags or pad pouches. I obviously will be wearing one which will be soiled. I'll keep a clean one in this waterproof or water resistant lined pad pouch. Then when I go to change my pad, I just take the clean one out, put the dirty one in there, and then I either have a sort of a larger waterproof bag, or I've also got a boxy one which you can line your pads up in and just keep that in your handbag if you're out and about, or keep it in your bathroom. That would keep a day's worth in that boxy bag or in that wet bag. In terms of like general storage, you know, you just put them wherever. But so then what I do is at the end of the day, when I've got my wet bag full of dirty pads, I rinse them out in the sink. I always thought I needed to do it under cold water, but I've read that it doesn't really matter. You just rinse until the water runs effectively clear. And then because I also use cloth nappies, I just throw them in with my cloth nappies and wash them with that. But once it's rinse clear, you could just wash them with your clothes or whatever in a warm wash. Because a lot of these have a waterproof layer in them which can melt under hot temperatures, they're often suggested to wash in under 30 degrees. Mine normally go into a 40 to 60 degree wash depending on what I'm washing, and I haven't had any issues with delamination. So it really just depends on your wash routine, whether you use cloth nappies or not, how often you do washing, and so on. But you don't need to rinse them as you go. You can just put them in a little waterproof pouch, which are available from lots of different retailers, and seal it up, put it in another bag, and that's it. You can't smell them, you don't even know that they're there, and then throw them in your wash. You know, it's really, really very, very easy. No additional work at all except for that, you know, minute or two of rinsing. In terms of the number of wet bags that you might need, I only had a couple, and I was originally just keeping all my clean ones in one wet bag about the size and all my dirty ones in another. You can do it that way. It depends how many you're carrying around. I like to have the little pouch so that I don't have to carry that many. So if I'm just popping to the supermarket and there might just be a little bit of a risk, or if my period's due, I might just carry one little wet bag with a clean one in it just in case I get caught out. But I would try and have sort of 5 or so pouches, or at least one dirty and one clean wet bag of probably about this size, which looks like about maybe 20 by 20 centimeters. I thought I'd also mention menstrual underwear. This is a handmade pair of underwear made by Tiny Cheeks, especially for me when I was having some issues with really heavy flow. The great thing with underwear compared to pads, especially overnight, is it doesn't move, and I guess there's a lot more room to put a lot of absorbency. So when you are leaving the pad on all night long, it's effectively overnight pad. So this is a pair of underwear with a big pad sewn into it. Looks pretty funny, but really comfortable. Now, just to go into these in a little bit more detail, is that they are usually quite a bit more expensive. This pair was $25. I've seen them up to $45 or $50, depending on the maker. They are also a really, really good option, especially for overnights. So I've got 2 pairs of these. I've just ordered 3 more pairs, which will cover me for my 5 heaviest nights, so that I'm not concerned about leaking, because I did have some leaks with some pads from my heaviest days. So just thought I'd mention that. Can have your period and still wear cute undies. If you have any questions about menstrual cloth, any of the retailers, any of the fabrics, period undies, wet bags, boxy bags, pad wrappers, feel free to comment here or flick me a message. I would love to help you on your transition from disposable to reusable menstrual products. Thanks, have a good night.